My name is Denise Harper. I'm 41 years old, and I spent 5 years giving everything I had to Parkview Solutions, a mid-sized logistics firm based out of Columbus, Ohio. Early mornings, late-night proposal edits. Sunday client calls, I showed up when others didn't. And every single year, like clockwork, when I brought up the subject of a raise, my manager, Thomas Lang, leaned back in his leather chair, gave me that same rehearsed half smile, and said, "Let's talk again next quarter, Denise." Next quarter became next year, then the next. Eventually, it just became silence. Still, I stayed. Because I believed in loyalty. I believed that hard work would speak louder than self-promotion. I believed Thomas when he said the company had big plans for people who stuck it out. I believed until the day I didn't. It was a gray Wednesday in early February, and I was sitting across from Thomas in his office, which overlooked the downtown skyline he never shut up about. He barely looked at me as he thumbed through a stack of reports. Reports I'd compiled. Reports from a campaign that brought in $2.7 million in new client revenue. "Denise," he said without looking up, "we value you tremendously. But unfortunately, salary changes just aren't in the cards right now." The same speech, the same hollow praise, and the same tired suggestion to think like an owner. But I was tired of pretending that sacrifices were a badge of honor. I'd trained 4 junior associates over the years. 2 of them were now managers. Meanwhile, I was still making the same $68,000 salary I started with at 36. I asked one last time, "Can we revisit this with a concrete date that finally got his eyes off the page?" His voice turned sharp. "Denise, we're all making sacrifices. You need to be a team player." I nodded, smiled, walked out of his office with my pulse in my ears. I passed by the front desk where Ellie was juggling 2 ringing lines, past the bullpen where those same junior associates were prepping for meetings I used to lead, back to my cubicle, which hadn't moved an inch in 5 years. I sat in my car, hands on the wheel, engine off, for a long while. That night, I opened my laptop and typed one thing into Google Best Companies to work for in Ohio. Not to apply, not yet, just to see what else was out there. And that's when everything started to change. Senior marketing strategist, $195,000 plus performance bonus. Director of client partnerships, $140,000 with full benefits. I bookmarked both. Then I closed the laptop and told myself it was just curiosity. Just seeing what's out there. But deep down, I knew better. Something had shifted. 3 days later, Thomas Lang, my manager, dropped a thick folder on my desk without a word. It was the mid-state freight renewal, one of our largest accounts, a $3.1 million deal. On top of the 12 other accounts I was already juggling, there was a yellow sticky note slapped on top, written in his slanted handwriting. "Make sure they understand our value." Our value. I wasn't worth a $4,000 cost of living raise, but I was somehow worth keeping a multi-million-dollar client satisfied. I picked up the phone to call Midstate. Then I stopped. What if I stopped chasing Thomas Lang's approval? What if all this talk about loyalty and thinking like an owner was just a leash in disguise? I thought back to when I first joined Parkview Solutions. Back when Elaine Parson, the original founder, still walked the halls in her worn boots and faded denim blazer. She hired me after a long, thoughtful interview that felt more like a conversation about marketing ethics and strategic integrity. "You've got instinct," she told me. "I can teach everything else." Instinct is rare. 6 months later, Elaine sold the company to a holding firm out of Chicago. Then came Thomas Lang, armed with buzzwords, spreadsheets, and sweeping changes. On his first day, he gathered the entire team in the main conference room and launched into a speech about streamlining human capital and performance-based retention. I should have known right then, to him we weren't people. We were profit margins with first names. But I gave him the benefit of the doubt. For years, I stayed late, took weekend calls, trained his rising stars, and led emergency client salvages. And every time the reward was the same. "Great work, you've got potential." That word potential lost its meaning after the third person I trained became my manager. My father spent 4 decades working the line at an auto plant in Dayton. He used to say, "Loyalty's like interest. The longer you invest, the more it pays off." But Parkview didn't pay interest. They drained people dry. I watched 3 of our best team members quit in 6 months. Thomas replaced them with fresh college grads and called it innovation. The office changed, collaboration turned into competition, trust gave way to fear, and ideas were hoarded like ammunition. And on that cold February afternoon, holding Mid-State's file in my hand, I finally saw it clearly. That night, I clicked apply on just one job listing. Just one. But it was enough to start something big. 3 days later, everything shifted. It was a quiet Monday morning in February when the email landed in my inbox. Subject line, interview invitation, Horizon Edge Partners. I stared at it for a solid 30 seconds before I opened it. My hands hovered over the keyboard, like the moment might vanish if I blinked too hard. Dear Ms. Harper, thank you for your application. We were impressed by your background and client success metrics. We'd like to invite you to interview with us this Thursday at 10 a.m. at our Columbus headquarters. Horizon Edge, one of the fastest-growing strategic firms in the Midwest. Known for innovation, internal promotion, and treating their people like assets, not line items. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't recognized in a while: hope. For the next 3 days, I kept my head down at Parkview. I handled the Mid-State freight renewal, stayed late, sat in on calls with a fake smile and dead eyes. But inside, something was different now. I wasn't doing it for them anymore. I was doing it for me. Thursday came fast. I called in and said I had a family obligation, a half-truth. Because sometimes you have to show up for yourself like you would for family. When I stepped into Horizon's glass-paneled office, I immediately noticed the difference. The air was lighter. Plants were real. Desks were spaced intentionally. People weren't rushing or whispering. They looked like they actually wanted to be there. Michelle Yates, the Director of Strategic Partnerships, greeted me in the lobby with a firm handshake and a warm, "We've been looking forward to meeting you." We sat down in a sunlit conference room. No flickering fluorescents, no corporate buzzwords taped to the walls. "We followed your work with Mid-State Freight and Broadline Logistics," Michelle said as she flipped through a dossier. "Your retention rate and client feedback are exceptional. For the first time in 5 years, I felt seen. No condescension, no vague encouragement, just genuine recognition." We talked about strategy, leadership, team development, and what real support looks like in this industry. 2 hours passed in what felt like 20 minutes. Then, Michelle leaned back and said, "We'd like to offer you a role as senior partner strategist. It comes with a 30% salary increase, quarterly performance bonuses, and a $5,000 development budget." I blinked. "You're serious?" She smiled. "Dead serious. We invest in people who invest in clients. If you're ready, we can move quickly." By the time I got home, the offer letter was already in my inbox. 30% more full benefits and a growth budget that proved they weren't just talking the talk. I sat on the couch rereading the offer in silence. 5 years at Parkview, and I couldn't get a $3,000 raise. One meeting with Horizon Edge, and they saw my worth. It was an easy decision. I printed the offer from Horizon Edge Partners, signed it, scanned it back, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. If this story moved you, even just a little, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's not just a button, it's your seat at the table for more real, powerful stories like mine. Stories of quiet strength, hard lessons, and well-earned redemption. And trust me, the next part, it's one you won't want to miss. Because what happened next didn't just change my career, it changed everything. So hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and join a community that knows what it means to rise after being overlooked. This isn't the end. It's only the beginning. That Friday morning, I walked into Parkview Solutions with my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. I wasn't planning to quit that day. I still wanted to give notice, be professional, wrap up my accounts, and leave on good terms. But Thomas Lang had other plans. At 9:30 a.m., sharp he buzzed my line and said, "Can you come to my office?" I figured it was one of his usual let's regroup meetings. I stepped inside calm and collected. But the look on his face told me this was different. Cold. Controlled. He didn't even ask me to sit. "Close the door." I did. Without a word, he turned his laptop around. An email was open. My LinkedIn profile displayed on the screen. A recruiter from Horizon Edge had commented on a post I'd made 2 weeks earlier. "Great reconnecting, Denise. Always admired your work." A harmless exchange. I hadn't even noticed it. Thomas stared at me. "Care to explain this?" I met his gaze. "I applied to Horizon Edge. On my own time. With my own resources." His lip twitched almost a smirk. "So, it's true. You've been job hunting behind my back." I blinked. Behind his back? I didn't realize I needed permission to explore my own future. "Thomas." He cut me off with a raised hand. "I don't tolerate disloyalty, Denise." He reached into his drawer, pulled out a termination form, and placed it on the desk. "Your badge access is already deactivated. Pack your things. You're firing me for applying to another company for breach of trust. Disloyal employees deserve nothing," he said flatly. The words hit harder than I expected, not because I was scared, but because I finally saw him clearly. Not as a leader, just a man drunk on control. I stood, straightened my blazer, looked him in the eye. "Then I wish you the best of luck, Thomas." He didn't respond. I turned and walked out. No argument, no shouting match. Because sometimes the loudest statement is walking away. That weekend, I packed up my apartment with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. My last morning as a Parkview employee was gray and overcast, typical Columbus in February. But I didn't feel bitter or anxious. I felt free. After 5 years of being overlooked, undervalued, and underpaid, I was finally done with Parkview Solutions. And I was finally done chasing approval from people who never planned to give it. My first day at Horizon Edge Partners hit me like a breath of fresh air. No forced smiles, no passive-aggressive motivational speeches. Just real people doing real work in a space that actually felt alive, not like a prison cell dressed up with a Keurig machine and a ping-pong table. Michelle Yates, the director who hired me, greeted me in person. "We're truly glad you're here, Denise." And for the first time in years, I believe someone meant it. The onboarding wasn't a one-size-fits-all presentation either. It was a real conversation, just me and Michelle, about goals, leadership style, client vision, and what success would actually look like in this role. Toward the end of our meeting, she paused and leaned forward slightly. "One more thing," she said. "We heard Mid-State Freight might be shopping for new representation." My eyebrows lifted. Mid-State. They've been with Parkview for years. Michelle gave a knowing smile. "Not anymore. Word is the new account lead isn't delivering." A quiet swirl of satisfaction stirred inside me. Thomas Lang had reassigned all my clients the moment he kicked me out, probably handed them off to someone who looked good on a spreadsheet. That afternoon, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Denise. This is Aaron Wright from Mid-State Freight. Are you available to discuss a possible consulting partnership?" I stared at the screen, then typed back, "Absolutely. Let me know what works for you." I didn't need to ask what had gone wrong. I already knew. By Wednesday, we had a meeting on the books. Aaron Mid-State's CEO didn't waste time on pleasantries. We sat across from each other in a downtown conference room while his assistant quietly shut the door. "I'll be direct," he said. "Since you left Parkview, the quality of service has slipped. Missed deadlines, poor communication, it's not the same." I kept my tone neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that." He leaned in slightly. "We knew how much you personally handled. Your attention to detail wasn't just appreciated, it was trusted. The message was clear. They wanted out. They wanted me. I'd be happy to explore a partnership," I said, "through Horizon Edge." Aaron gave a relieved smile. "That's what I was hoping to hear." By Friday, the contract was signed. Mid-State Freight, a $3.1 million account, was officially moving to Horizon Edge. And just like that, things started to unravel for Thomas Lang and Parkview Solutions. As for Thomas Lang, I never reached out to him. I didn't have to. Columbus might not be New York or LA, but in the consulting world here, everyone knows everyone. And word travels fast. By Monday, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Texts from former coworkers, clients, even acquaintances I barely remembered. Did you really sign Midstate Freight with Horizon? Thomas has been in back-to-back meetings since 8 a.m. HR's scrambling. 2 more clients are asking about you. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Then came a message I didn't expect, this one from Ellie, Parkview's longtime receptionist. One of the kindest souls I'd worked with in that entire building. Thomas just sent out a company-wide email. He's blaming you for client losses. Said you violated confidentiality and poached Midstate. He's trying to make you look shady. I read it twice. My chest tightened. So he hadn't just fired me, he was now trying to scorch my name on his way down. For a second, I felt the old anger flare up. The disbelief, the unfairness. Then, I smiled, because Thomas Lang had just made a major mistake. I wasn't worried about office gossip. I wasn't worried about my reputation. What I did have was a clean employment agreement with Horizon Edge. No non-compete clause. And Midstate. They had approached me, not the other way around. But Thomas, he'd just put a false accusation in writing. Company-wide. That wasn't just petty, it was actionable. I'd dealt with people like him before. People who confuse power with ownership. Who think silence equals submission. I took a breath, opened a new email, and forwarded Ellie's screenshot to Michelle Yates. Thought you should see this. Her reply came 5 minutes later. Let's talk first thing Monday. And Denise, you absolutely did the right thing. He thought he'd buried me. What he didn't realize? I was just getting started. That next Monday, I walked into Horizon Edge calmer than I'd felt in years. The lobby buzzed softly with morning activity, but I wasn't nervous. Michelle waved me into her office before I even reached my desk. She shut the door behind us. Her expression was professional, but her eyes laser-focused. Let's talk about next steps, she said. And I knew in that moment Thomas Lang had picked the wrong person to try and silence. I read the forwarded email from Ellie, then met with Michelle Yates that morning. She sat across from me, posture calm and professional, but her tone sharper, more focused. Thomas Lang crossed a line, she said evenly. Defamation, in writing, directed at a former employee, in front of clients. That's not just tacky, that's legally actionable. I nodded, hands folded in my lap. I'm not looking to start a war. Michelle's mouth curved into a small, dry smile. You didn't. He did. We'll take it from here. That same afternoon, Horizon Edge's legal counsel drafted and delivered a formal cease and desist letter to Parkview Solutions. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't personal. It was professional, precise, legally sound. Parkview was given 48 hours to retract the defamatory statement Thomas had blasted across the company. If not, they'd face legal action for slander and tortious interference. But while our side was cool and measured, Thomas had made this personal. Very personal. Within 48 hours, the fallout began. I didn't have to say a word. I didn't chase down anyone. Clients started reaching out to me. Denise, is it true? You're with Horizon Edge now. We're reconsidering our contract with Parkview. We want to talk to your new firm. It turns out when you treat people like they're replaceable, others take note. And when the glue of your client relationships walks out the door, the business follows. By Friday, Michelle pulled me aside. She tapped a manila folder sitting on her desk. 3 new clients signed this week. All from your former roster. I blinked. She slid the folder toward me. And Midstate Freight just expanded their contract by 20%. They're adding a full digital growth initiative, and they want you leading it. I stared at her. They... What? Michelle nodded. They said working with you again restored their trust. Seems Thomas had no idea what you were really worth. She smiled gently. We do. That should have been the end. A clean break? A quiet win? But people like Thomas, they don't know how to let go. The following Monday morning, Ellie texted me again. Heads up. HR meeting at Parkview. Word is, Thomas is under internal investigation. Glenmore's CEO sent a formal letter clearing your name. Said they approached you, not the other way around. I put my phone down slowly. Thomas hadn't just lost control. He'd triggered an implosion. And he was about to learn something the hard way. Trying to bury the truth only makes it louder. Cleared your name? It's bad. Like, really bad. That was the last line of Ellie's text. I read it twice, the words sinking in slowly. A cold weight settled in my chest, not fear, but something deeper. I hadn't asked Mid-State Freight to get involved. I didn't ask them to vouch for me. But they had. Publicly. Decisively. That said more than anything I could have written in a rebuttal email. And once the statement from Aaron Wright, Mid-State's CEO, made its way into the consulting community, the dominoes started falling fast. Parkview's executive leadership launched a formal review. Thomas Lang's decisions and his management style suddenly came under a spotlight. A bright one. And under that glare, the truth wasn't flattering. He'd cycled through half the senior staff in under 2 years. Client retention numbers were hitting record lows. Turnover was spiking. Morale had cratered. The image Thomas tried to control with polished LinkedIn posts and buzzword-loaded speeches didn't hold up under scrutiny. His so-called leadership style, it had become a liability. Then came the unexpected call from Elaine Parson, the original founder of Parkview Solutions. She had long since retired, but I still recognized her voice. Steady, measured, a little older, but unmistakably hers. "Denise," she said, "I want to say I'm sorry for what happened to you. This isn't the company I built. I didn't know what to say at first." "Thank you, Elaine." There was a pause. Then she added, "The partners have asked me to return in a consulting role. Temporarily. I'm trying to assess the damage and see if anything's worth saving." I wanted to believe her, but I also knew sometimes what's broken doesn't want to be fixed. 1 week later, the news hit the business wire. Parkview Solutions announces leadership restructuring. Thomas Lang departs. Effective immediately. No spin, no tribute, just a quiet corporate exit. But in our industry, we all knew what it meant. He hadn't stepped down. He'd been pushed. I didn't throw a party. There was no smug celebration. Just a deep, quiet breath of closure. Thomas Lang had fired me, humiliated me, tried to ruin my name. And now, he'd lost everything he clung to for power. Because here's the thing, no one tells you. Loyalty is only noble when it's mutual. Use it as a weapon and don't be surprised when it backfires loudly. I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong, because Thomas wasn't done with me yet. Thomas Lang had been fired. Parkview Solutions was scrambling to clean up the wreckage he left behind, clients defecting, internal chaos, HR working overtime. Meanwhile, I had moved on, thriving at Horizon Edge Partners, surrounded by clients who respected my expertise and colleagues who valued what I brought to the table. But people like Thomas, they don't go quietly. It started with a harmless LinkedIn notification: Thomas Lang viewed your profile. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe curiosity, maybe regret. But 2 days later, I got a call from a recruiter I'd known for years. "Hey, Denise, off the record, did you know Thomas is asking around about you, quietly suggesting you broke confidentiality at Parkview?" My stomach dropped. He wasn't just bitter, he was trying to blacklist me. In a tight-knit industry like consulting, one well-placed whisper can follow you for years. Reputation is everything. I sat in my office at Horizon Edge, watching the Columbus skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. I could have let it go, ignored him, focused on my clients, and left him to fade into irrelevance. But then I remembered something my father once said: "You don't teach people a lesson by letting them believe they got away with it." So no, I didn't retaliate. I didn't rant online. I didn't lower myself to his level. Instead, I got to work. I gathered everything: messages from recruiters, informal warnings, any traceable pattern of what Thomas had been doing behind the scenes. I compiled a clean, factual report and handed it to Michelle Yates and Horizon Edge's legal team. They didn't hesitate. Within the week, they submitted a formal ethics complaint to the Midwest Consulting Association, the regional body that oversees professional conduct in our field. Turns out Thomas had crossed more lines than I realized: defamation, malicious interference, violating post-employment ethical standards. A full investigation was launched. 2 months later, I got the official update. Thomas Lang's membership was revoked, his name removed from the registry. Blacklisted. Quietly, but completely. No major consulting firm in the region would touch him after that. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. Because this wasn't revenge. It was accountability. A few weeks later, I received a short, bitter email from him. Congrats. You got what you wanted. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back. What I wanted was a workplace built on respect. What you wanted was control. We both got what we earned. I hit send. No more, no less. That email was the last time I ever heard from Thomas Lang. Over the next year, my client portfolio at Horizon Edge Partners grew faster than I ever imagined. Not just Midstate Freight, but also Crescent Dynamics, Harper Logistics, and Silverline Technologies, some of the biggest names in the region. And every one of them came to me not because I played politics or kept my head down to earn favor, but because I delivered. Because I earned trust, and because I never stopped showing up with integrity, even when others didn't. Before my first anniversary at Horizon, Michelle Yates called me into her office. She offered me a promotion, Director of Client Partnerships. It came with a 35% salary increase, equity participation, and a flexible schedule that actually respected work-life balance. All the things I used to beg for at Parkview now, given freely by people who valued my contribution, not just my compliance. That evening, over drinks with Michelle and a few members of the leadership team, the conversation turned to company culture. What makes a business thrive or crumble? I didn't hold back. I stayed at Parkview for 5 years, I said, thinking loyalty would eventually pay off. But all it did was show me that loyalty means nothing to people who only see you as a tool. Michelle raised her glass and asked, and now I smiled. Now I know loyalty isn't something you owe. It's something you choose. When and only when it's earned. We clinked glasses, and I meant every word. And you know what? I never thought I'd say this, but in some strange way, I'm grateful for Thomas Lang. He taught me one of the most important lessons I'll carry with me, not just in business, but in life. Loyalty without respect is a cage. And when the only thing holding you in place is fear or guilt, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. I built a career I'm proud of, not because I stayed quiet, but because I refused to let silence cost me my self-worth. Some stories end with revenge, but mine ended with freedom. And that I've learned is the most satisfying ending of all. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you for listening to my story. What happened to me isn't unique, but it's real. Maybe you've been in a place like Parkview. Maybe you've worked under someone like Thomas Lang, someone who confused control with leadership. Maybe you've stayed too long, hoping loyalty would turn into respect. If that sounds like you, I want you to know something important. You are not alone. Leave me a comment below. Tell me what part of my story hit home for you. Did you ever work for a boss who tried to dim your light? Were you ever passed over, undervalued, or made to feel replaceable? I read every comment, and I'd love to hear how you rose above it, or how you're planning to. Because if my story can be a mirror for someone else's courage, then it was worth sharing. And here's the advice I hope you carry with you. Loyalty means nothing without mutual respect. Staying silent to keep the peace only teaches people that your boundaries can be ignored. Don't wait for someone else to validate your worth. Recognize it yourself, then act accordingly. Even small steps count. Updating a resume, taking a call, walking away from a chair you've outgrown. Support those who fight quietly, like I did. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, not just for me, but for every voice that's been silenced, every worker who's been told you're lucky to be here, and every person ready to reclaim their dignity. My story doesn't end here, and neither does yours.